Alright guys, that's Kremp again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. A potentially hugely significant day in the history of Call of Duty Esports today, with Hastro reacquiring the EnVy branding from the OpTic EnVy partnership that happened a couple of years ago and caused massive controversy in the scene. Dallas Empire, EnVy among others, may well be back. What does this mean for that partnership? Exactly what is going on to cause this? What's Hastro's plan by reacquiring the brand in this way? OpTic Texas were in action this evening as well. They take down the Vegas Falcons in an interesting fashion. Very much interested your thoughts and all this in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new. As always, it was only a couple of days ago we were talking about Dallas Empire as a brand and the fact that it was a phenomenal brand. Obviously, the branding couldn't be EnVy because we went from pre-CDL into the CDL. The empire of all the brandings that were formed, I loved it. The N and the V were still seen in the logo because it was slightly asymmetrical. Many legendary teams that they formed over the couple of years they were around, such as this one, of course, which was the Cold War team, but then the year before they won the World Championship when Priestahh was on the roster as well. So great branding, and a couple of days ago we've seen Hastro start to return to Twitter, talk a bit more about CoD, give his perspective, because Hastro was kind of non-existent in the CoD scene for a couple of years. If you guys remember the timeline, the CDL comes around, Hex had sold OpTic to Infinite Esports, they then sold it to Immortals. He was trying to find a way to get a CoD team. He partnered with Andy Miller and NRG to set up Chicago Huntsmen. Then he was able to acquire the naming rights to OpTic again. He made it the OpTic Chicago. Then, of course, he wanted to do his own thing. He takes OpTic away, but then he partnered with Hastro and EnVy and made that merger happen as kind of like the new home of OpTic from a financial perspective, really, because EnVy had serious big backing at the time as an organization that OpTic didn't necessarily. They merged, and look, I'll be perfectly honest, the day that this happens, there were many of us thinking, I don't know how this is going to end, because we saw how it ended with Andy Miller and NRG, not especially well. You know, Hex and Andy had a big falling out. And when Hastro came on board, initially it was like an OpTic EnVy partnership type thing, but it quickly became OpTic are the brands, EnVy are kind of like the back ends type thing. So it was the same org, really, but OpTic took over all the branding. And it makes sense, right? EnVy was, you know, in the grand scheme of things, a great legendary brand in esports, but OpTic, you know, had more of a presence, you know, they'd sell more jerseys, that type of stuff. So kind of EnVy, the EnVy badge, the logo on the headquarters got taken over. It became an OpTic one, and Hastro kind of disappeared. And it felt like, sure, Hastro's in the back end, you know, providing and making the money with the investors, and Hex is managing the front end with OpTic. But I think understandably there were going to be some issues there, and that's kind of where we fast forward to the present day. So Hastro's been more active over the last couple of weeks, talking about esports, talking about the changes he would like to make, and then he puts this out, EOD, in binary, and by the end of the day, he then puts this one out today. I was recently given a chance to reacquire EnVy along with the Dallas Fuel, that was their Overwatch team, and the Dallas Empire brands. I took the chance. So firstly, to mention here, I believe it's not like he has taken control of OpTic. In some respects, Hex has pulled off a bit of a heist here, I think, to some degree, which doesn't really surprise me. But, of course, OpTic and EnVy merged, so that's the organization, the back end and the front ends, and I seem like Hastro is kind of doing what Hex did when he now has the, you know, the rights to the branding, and he's going to probably just split off and do his own thing, because as he says, post-transaction, I will not be a shareholder or associated with OpTic in any way. My team will gain access to the social media accounts for the brands next week. So it seems like EnVy is back, officially back. Hastro's going to manage it kind of as his own organization now. So what that means for OpTic, it's a big question, right? Because, you know, we lost these brands. Hastro and Hex were kind of working together on OpTic EnVy, but understandably, in the same way that Hex never wanted to lose his brands, Hastro never wanted to lose his brand in EnVy. But the way that things went with OpTic, that's what happened. And EnVy, Dallas Empire, Dallas Fuel, all of those brands died a death. I think we've now got to the point in esports where Hastro feels confident, given the open circuit nature of things, that running an organization like EnVy again and trying to build it up in the way that he did back in the day may be a viable option again. We know that the CDL is changing potentially for next year. They've, of course, got rid of franchising. They've given all the money back, and there's a feeling going around that maybe next year it will become a more open circuit style system where teams that aren't in the league can get involved. Because, look, are EnVy going to field the Challengers roster? Are Dallas Empire going to be called that? I don't know, because Dallas, of course, no longer in the league unless they come back and take over the, you know, some of the spots that are still remaining out there. Maybe Ravens want to sell or something. There are some possibilities, but yeah, yeah, they're right back into it. And actually, I saw this earlier today. A couple of people were pointing this out, that EnVy have been spotted here on the Apex Legends World Championship page. As soon as I saw this, I was like, something's going on here, because I've not seen this EnVy logo, which brings back many great memories in many a year. And they've also brought on Dropped, who used to play for OpTic, I think, on their Apex team, and now he's part of EnVy. So it's all very interesting, really. What it means for OpTic, I don't know the answers. What it means for EnVy, I don't know the answers either. But what I do know is that I love Dallas Empire as a brand, loved EnVy as a brand, and as I said the other day, given that EnVy never really focused on content as much as the other teams, the way that things went with EnVy was probably inevitable. But the way that the Call of Duty League now is, there's an argument that maybe both could coexist. But obviously with Hastro out of OpTic on the behind the scenes ends, what does that mean for the OpTic bankroll? You know, like, what does it look like financially behind the scenes at OpTic? Because we saw what's happened before a couple of times now where OpTic has needed to be sold around to keep it running. So I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what the relationship's like between Hex and Hastro. But look, at the end of the day, Hastro disappeared from the CoD scene for a couple of years, and he's been back over the last couple of weeks, and now he's taking control of EnVy, breaking away from OpTic and building it up on his own again. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. Wishing the best for all parties. Hopefully it can be great for CoD. I mean, I'd love to have EnVy back in the scene in some capacity. Maybe next year if the CDL changes format to some degree, that's a realistic possibility. Let's dive straight into the games, because this one was dramatic. Gorilla's mates, okay, Gentle mates, they played Cloud9 New York. This was a series that I thought Cloud9 would win. I'd not been impressed by Gentle mates so far, but they genuinely did play some better CoD in this series. Kismet and Lynz have been relatively good so far. Skyz has been not particularly impactful, and Priestahh has been non-existent. And I always have a hard time, you know, criticizing players that seem like, you know, such great guys. Priestahh is one of those guys, but look, he's not been good so far this season, and criticism of his play so far was absolutely justified. But this series, they put him more so on the Jackal, on the SMG, and he was absolutely cooking. Phenomenal to see Priestahh back in action, because such a great player in his day, and, you know, I firmly believe the most versatile player in the history of Call of Duty is Priestahh, in terms of running every role, doing whatever you want. It just felt like over the last, you know, couple of years or so, he wasn't the player that he used to be. But like, he's had one absolute standout series here. On the Cloud9 side, again, it wasn't a great time for Simp. So game one, Priestahh goes 32-22, massive game. They win the Skyline hardpoint. They take it to the search and destroy, and they win that one as well. So I know, you know, understandably for Gorillas, there's been so much support from the French scene, from Gataga, and they wanted to see this team succeed, at least get a win on the board. They've been so close, they've just squandered many opportunities. Cloud9, they've been looking better lately, but yeah, not so in this series, really. They go down 2-0, and then the control, Lynz started this map out 4 in 17, and nearly finished neutral. He had a mega bounce back in the control, and it was Kismet making some good plays in the side as well. Cloud9 went up 2-0 in this map, and then Gorillas bring it back to win the whole thing 3-2. So mega map, honestly, and a crucial result in many ways, right? Gentlemates getting their first win of the season, and Cloud9 getting 3-0s, especially after being up 5-3 in map 5 against Ravens at the Minor, squandering it, going down 6-5, and now getting 3-0'd by a winless team in the league. As Lynn says, got to stay focused for the rest of the season, and understandably the immediate reaction here from Simp, among others, was not exactly the best. What do we do with Cloud9 if you were to make the decisions over here? As I say, Lynz made a big comeback. I thought Kismet really impressed me on the final couple of minutes of that map. Obviously, as the flags say, no scrims they had for one day, Cloud9, and maybe that affected them to some degree. But it's got to be talked about, right? Simp, again, with a difficult series. He's not gone positive in one single series he's played so far this year. And against Gentlemates, that would have been expected, absolutely. Something's up with his gameplay so far this year. He's clearly not very happy about it. Priestahh was happy with the win. And even just looking, if I hit the refresh on this, how many likes this tweet probably already has. Yeah, 2,500 likes is, you know, pretty big for a regular league match series. And obviously in the replies, lots of French fans very happy with the fact that their team has finally got a win on the board. Attach wasn't happy, understandably, through every single map away. GG's Gentlemates lost 0-3. And this guy says, time that Simp, you know, starts flipping burgers, basically. And it's tricky to say what you do, as I say, with Cloud9, because Kremp and Mack have been their best two players, And attaches, you know, like at the end of the day, attach went positive for the loss here in 3 maps, and people obviously are going to clown him for that. But sometimes that can be how it goes when you go, you know, positive on a map, you lose closely, and then the other maps are kind of even, whatever. The numbers don't always tell the whole story of these type of series, but I thought it was relevant just to look at some of the numbers here because, yeah, Simp has been poor again, but what do you do with Cloud9? Because you look at the team, you look at accuracy as the coach, great boys with Attach, great boys with Sib, great boys with Mack. Kremp on paper in terms of personalities, he's the odd man out, but he's arguably been their best player. So if they're going to make a change, I don't know what they're going to do. Friendship cheese might come into play over there. We'll talk about OpTic versus Falcons. I thought it was going to be even more comfortable, actually, than the 3 they had at the minor. That was not true. And I think this series proved for many that there's a lot of people out there that really want Falcons to succeed. They have a lot of ambition, they have a lot of passion, and I hope that they can get some results from this team. Because they've showed some promise, right? And obviously people are going to roast OpTic because this was close again. But at the end of the day, I think Falcons actually played some pretty good CoD here. Unfortunately for them, OpTic were just a little bit better. Game 1 was a massive lead for OpTic early on. Huke was going absolutely nuclear. And Falcons brought a bit of a comeback, to be fair to them. But in the end, it didn't really matter. OpTic took the victory regardless, 250 to 179 or something in that kind of ballpark. Then we went to a Game 2 on the Vault Search and Destroy. This was the one that Falcons actually went on to win. And Falcons were bringing the absolute passion this map. I thought it was great to watch. They eventually go up 5-4. They eventually take the victory as well. I know that Scump was reacting to this moment because they were absolutely buzzing about it. And look how hyped the boys are, right? It is good to see this kind of passion in the CoD scene. And look, winning a map against the world champions is always going to be a great accomplishment. But, and watching this series, and for the first couple of minutes, I was like, bloody hell, it really is just pros against challenges. But that's not really how I felt as the series went on here. So shout out those guys. They're doing their best to try and improve. Unfortunately, they've lost their best player back. You know, obviously Kix has gone back to Saudi Arabia for a reason that we just don't know. And that's obviously affected them. But they win the map 2. And OpTic after that, they decided to really lock in. But even then, I mean, the control OpTic easily could have lost this one. They didn't. They went map 5 or went round 5 and eventually OpTic won it. But yeah, this was competitive for sure. And then obviously they won the final rounds. And then OpTic closed out the map 4 relatively comfortably. So it shouldn't be a massive surprise, the result of this series, but the way that it happened was surprising, I would say. I think people would have expected OpTic to be more comfortable here, but also it's nice to see Falcons putting up a bit of a fight. The reality is, though, that they're still not good enough, and Gentlemates now have a victory on the board, whereas obviously the Vegas Falcons do not as it stands. So this was the final map anyway. OpTic eventually ran away with it. They won at 250, 144. These are some of the final numbers, and to be fair, over the course of the series, this was a mega map or mega series from Huke right here. 1.58 from him, 1.3 from Shotzzy. Kenny and Dashy had a chill late, didn't really do anything. And yeah, again, there were good performances in there from Doom, from Wixel, from Roxas, kind of. But and Exton, of course, had a 1.0. But I mean, good performances as in, at times in this series, they looked okay. But they still end the series with a point, you know, in the 0.7s. And we were looking today on the pre-show, looking through the worst ever KDs in the history of the CDL. I mean, I know it's a small sample size, but the bottom 10 positions right now are populated by a lot of Vegas Falcons players that have been in this team over the last few weeks. And the final series today was probably always going to be the most interesting in terms of the likelihood of it to go to a Game 5, and that's exactly what happened. It was kind of like a classic Minnesota Rocker series. I always used to joke about Rocker in the past that they used to annoy me as a European CoD fan because they'd always go Game 5 no matter what. Even if it was clear that they were always going to lose or win the Game 5 against whoever they're playing, they'd always find a way to make it there. But fair play. I mean, they have some resilience, but I did feel like Toronto, if it went to 5, were going to be a bit too strong. That's basically exactly what happened. It was a pretty similar affair to what's happened when they played at the major, but of course, or the minor, sorry. But at the minor, Rocker reverse swept them. This time, that's not what happened. Ultra won the Game 2. Estriel had a big game on that Hacienda Game 2. He tied up the series for Minnesota. Then it was, you know, flip and flop either way, basically. Ultra clutched up in the round 5 in the control. This time they played the protocol instead of the vault that they played before, where Insight had the streak and he didn't call it in. This time Ultra get the win in the final rounds. This is pretty icy, to be fair, clutching up on the offense on protocol in the round 5. And that felt like it would be good enough, really, to get the win in the series. But it wasn't so clear because on the next game, Rocker actually did a great job. Again, Paulx was having the stinky of all stinkies. But they did bring a great comeback on the final couple of hard points. They held down the money hill. Ultra couldn't get the rotation in time. And they go to a Game 5 again. So Rocker are always good for a Game 5, whoever they play, it seems. But I do think that Ultra might still be the best search and destroy team in the game. They're certainly up there. And I mentioned this on the pre-show earlier that I just had a feeling today that if it went 5, Ultra were going to win. And they didn't just win, they absolutely decimated them. It was a 6-0. JoeDeceives nearly had a perfect game. Beans was talking a bit of trash afterwards. You know, he was pointing at his ear saying, what are you guys talking about? And then he threw the middle finger up. Not the best screenshot here that I got. But you know what I'm saying, right? Ultra slammed them on the Protocol map 5. They take the 3-2. Minnesota Rocker go down. Only one team could win. Only one team could lose. But Ultra continue their good record. I mean, they started 4-0. They're now 5-0. They've beaten Rocker, who beat them at the minor and obviously made it to the semis. Lost to FaZe. Toronto will feel like if they'd have been in that situation, maybe they'd have gone a step further. Final numbers are as follows in the series. Very much intrigued to hear all your thoughts on this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.